What's going on, guys? So yesterday, the Director of National Intelligence put out a PSA, a public service announcement to law enforcement and first responders throughout the U.S. Now, you may be thinking, what did this PSA entail? What was it about? Well, I'm going to tell you what it was about. It is about the information that myself, Command 11, the Survival Report, through Survival Dispatch, Sarah Adams, American Kintex, Apex Guard, all of us have been talking about this attack from Al-Qa'ida and ISIS on the homeland, right here in the U.S., bringing it to our doorstep. That's what it was talking about. So I have it pulled up right here. I'm going to hit a couple points on it, and then I have some information here I'm going to read off to you to kind of help you further understand what I'm talking about. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about at all, go back to my tabs, and there's one called Intelligence. You can go in there and find all of this information, the pre-information, the breakdowns, the reports and things I've talked about. You can go over there to the tabs to Intelligence and find those videos and give them a watch. I would highly suggest it, just so you know what is going on. So pretty much what this PSA was entailing, this press briefing reference to PSA, is that they were trying to coordinate and gather information better and get it out to first responders, and that first responders need to be informed about what's going on. Now, this was an unclassified intelligence product. Now, I believe there's probably a briefing for law enforcement and first responders that's going to go over to them. I hadn't talked to any of my people yet to see if they've received this bulletin yet. And hopefully if they have, I can take a look at it. But they're just trying to streamline their information gathering, and so they can get it pushed out to law enforcement and first responders. And that way they can be more informed and be paying attention. So this right here, and some of you may know her and some of you may despise her, but she does have some good information, Laura Loomer. So she put out a post on X, and let me come over here real quick. And all right, so there it is right there, just in case I get myself off here a little bit on what I've got printed up. But she posted on X, new, must read. And I'm going to pretty much go through all of this. I was going to mark it up and hit the high points. Most of this is high points. So we're going to go through this. So she states, urgent intelligence alert. NCTC confirms Al-Qaeda presence on U.S. soil, imminent multi-city Islamic terror attacks. And what they're talking about is Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And in my prior videos, we have talked about that and kind of broke that down a little bit. All of these different terrorist cells that used to bicker and fight amongst each other have finally decided to team up, join forces against their ultimate enemy, which is, of course, the U.S. being one of them, and, infidels and things like that. So sources tell me tonight that the National Counterterrorism Center, the NCTC, has officially determined that the Islamic terrorists affiliated with Al-Qaeda have infiltrated U.S. soil and are actively planning a series of coordinated Islamic terror attacks. This marks the first time in federal counterterrorism, the first time that federal counterterrorism officials have openly acknowledged the immediacy of such things, of such threats, signaling a potential escalation in domestic jihadist activity, not since the height of the ISIS-inspired plots in the mid-2010s. You'll have to give me a little break. I didn't plan on doing a video today, so really wasn't prepared for all of this. According to the NCTC's latest assessment, shared in a classified briefing to congressional leaders and leaked today, Al-Qa'ida cells emboldened by the group's resurgence in Afghanistan and North and Central Africa have embedded themselves across major urban centers in the U.S. We've talked about that a little bit. I believe I showed a map of that. May have come from Command 11. This has been confirmed through intercepted communications, financial tracking, and human intelligence. Sources tell me this is a sophisticated operation aimed at maximizing casualties and chaos. So, indicators of preparation, uniforms, hospitals, and deception techniques. Now, here we go with hospitals, which is the healthcare facilities, terror situation, terror attack plot that we've talked about multiple times. So, my sources tell me the attack strategy by Al-Qa'ida is designated to sow confusion and cripple emergency response. We've talked about that. These terrorists have been purchasing large quantities of police and first responder uniforms from surplus outlets and online vendors in at least 5 states. These acquisitions have been tracked through bulk credit card anomalies, and CCTV footage suggests a plan to impersonate law enforcement during the assaults, allowing attackers to blend in, direct panicked crowds, or even, execute secondary strikes on fleeing victims. We've talked about all of that. It's time to pay attention. My sources tell me Al-Qa'ida terror attacks planned in the U.S. are focused on hospitals and medical facilities. Been preaching this stuff. Me, Command 11, SurvivalReport, Sarah Adams, American Kintex. We've all been talking about this for like a year now. Like a year. Even went over to potential cities. You know, those... believe it was tier 2 cities with the level 1 trauma centers. NCTC has evidence that these terrorists are scoping emergency rooms, trauma centers, and triage points in cities like New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston, and Miami. The intent appears clear: disrupt the healthcare infrastructure to prevent treatment of wounded, effectively creating a second wave of fatalities through denial of care. In the event of attack, civilians could face a nightmare scenario where friends and foe are indistinguishable. With medics overwhelmed and no safe haven for the injured, the potential for hundreds, if not thousands, of additional deaths in the chaos is described by one DHS source as horrific beyond comprehension. The plot scales to simultaneous attacks, strikes across multiple cities, echoing Al-Qaeda's historical ambitions of mass casualty operations like 9/11, but adapted for urban guerrilla tactics. The targets could include soft sites such as crowded events, transportation hubs, and public gatherings. So, Al-Qa'ida terrorists disguised as first responders are planning to attack U.S. cities and our hospitals. Sorry about the jumping around. She had some kind of big words in there, and not a lot used to a lot of those big words. But this is what, like I said, the group of us have been talking about for like a year now. And the federal government hasn't given any traction, over the months. People have brought it to them, Sarah Adams and all that, and it's just been given old cold shoulder. Nobody cared. It's not going to happen here. We're going to be ostriches. We're going to put our heads in the sand. We're going to feel like, we're the United States. No one's going to come here. No one's going to attack us. Well, it's happened several times. You would be a moron to think it's not going to happen again, especially when you have enemies like we do. It's time for everybody to pay attention, to get your heads out of the sand and prepare. This is not clickbait. This is not some sort of, fictitious admiration that a handful of us are seeing. We've been preaching it and talking about it for months and months and months and months now, and nobody's really cared, to do much about it, including the federal government, nor state or local governments for that fact. Nobody wants to prepare. It's like I talked about in one of my videos dealing with safety of educational facilities. Nothing gets done. People just want to chit chat and this and that. And whenever something happens, they want to push the blame around here and there and be like, oh, I wish there was something we could have done. Well, there's something we can do now. A lot of it, honestly, is going to be too late because these jokers have already gotten here. They've been here. As I've told you in one of the reports from Command 11, from their boots on the ground people that are in these camps that are gathering this human intelligence, these people have been here. They have already embedded themselves in our society, embedded themselves in positions where they're able to kind of move around, such as, working in medical facilities, whether it's, pushing people around, maintenance, janitorial staff, they've already got themselves into these positions where they have proxy cards, where they can gain access to, access areas where you have to have, a means of being able to get in. This is crazy. It's time to pay attention, put your big boy pants on, and get yourself and your family prepared. You need to pay attention. Like I said, this isn't clickbait. Some people may have been thinking that, but we've been preaching it. And now the federal government has finally come out and said, yeah, they're here. They're in the midst of doing their thing. And now we're going to talk to law enforcement and first responders and try to let them know what's going on. And, you need to be paying attention and be aware of these situations. Should have been doing that like a year ago, more than a year ago. But open source intelligence began around a year ago. It's time to pay attention, people. Pay attention and get yourselves prepared and ready. There's only so much that I can preach, and Sarah Adams and Command 11, American Kintech, SurvivalReport. There's only so much we can do. At some point, you all are going to have to figure it out yourselves. I've got it figured out for myself and my family and friends. I've had it figured out for years. Because I saw this stuff on the horizon. I use my mind to pay attention. I look at information. You all need to be doing the same thing. Get yourselves ready. Get prepared. All right? So, if you want more information on this, if you have X, I implore everyone to get an X account. Go in there. You can put fake information, whatever. But go in there and follow Command 11, American Kintech, SurvivalReport, me. There's a handful of us in there. And like I've said in the past, you can go over to my X page and look at who I follow. And a lot of those people on there put out really good information. So a lot of those people you should follow, including myself. Because if you don't want to go through all their stuff, a lot of their information I repost on my page to kind of make it easier for my followers. So you don't have to kind of dig around. I put a lot of it on mine so you can go to mine and there's a lot of it there. But I don't get everything. I don't spend all day on a computer. I don't spend all day doing this. I have other things to do, namely prepping and preparing for bad situations. But with that, you all stay safe. Have a great day. And Minuteman is out.